Hey folks, James Fogarty at A Plus Schools. Wanted to give you a short version of the report to the community report that we did last week, just so that you have more information and you can learn more at ourschoolspittsburgh.org. So here are kind of the key points that I made in that presentation that I think are important for all of us to be considering going into next year, how we might be able to help our students succeed in Pittsburgh, how we might help our schools improve and be better, and how we as a community can come together and rally around this idea of showing up for kids so they can do the same. So, the first thing I did was really talk about this challenge of racial and economic segregation in our schools, right? Nearly half of PPS's white students attend 7 schools where the concentration of students facing economic disadvantages is less than 50%. In the buildings where student concentrated poverty is over 75%, 87% of the students are students of color. We had 9 schools that were highly segregated, where 75% or greater of any one racial subgroup. 86% of the students in those buildings were economically disadvantaged. We put forward choice as a tool to integrate schools years ago, and that has not led to that in Pittsburgh in most contexts, right? Which creates challenges for kids. But when we talk about integration, we also have to remember that integration by itself hasn't led to the outcomes that we wanted, right? And so W.E.B. Du Bois, in wrestling with this idea of like integration versus segregation over 90 years ago in an essay, Does the Negro Need Separate Schools, said, look, what is it that gets kids to come to school? And the framework he laid out had 5 real big components, and I believe are a good North Star for creating schools where students feel they belong and are excited to be. The first is that there's a sympathetic relationship between the teacher and student. Second, the teacher has knowledge of the individual student and their history, community, and background. Third, that there's a learning community of social equality that helps to increase sympathy and knowledge. Fourth, that the school is just a good place with good facilities and property equipment. And 5, that there's extracurricular activities that support the child's growth, right? And we believe that that's the right call and what we should be aiming for in our schools. Because right now, what we have are schools that are highly segregated, where kids are missing 10% or more at high rates, right? What we see is in high concentrated poverty schools, the average chronic absence rate, missing just 2 days a month or 18 days over the course of a school year, is 47%. In schools of lower concentrated poverty, it's only 18%, right? And so that 2.6 time difference is a huge difference in learning outcomes. And, we see this in national research where we see kids who are chronically absent in kindergarten and first grade are 4 times more likely not to be reading at grade level by 3rd grade than their peers. We see it in terms of dropping out, where kids who are chronically absent want in the grades between 8th and 12th grade are 7 times more likely to drop out. And we see it in our own outcomes here in Pittsburgh Public Schools, where only 44% of 3rd grade students this past year in 2025 were reading at proficient levels, and only 19% of our middle school students were doing math at grade level, right? And so what we know matters is that we get kids to school, get them in schools that have the components that Dr. Du Bois talked about, and that then sets them up for success. Right now, what we see is only 390 students out of 1344 that graduated in 2019, out of 1,680 that started as freshmen in 2015, completed college or trade school by 2025, right? And that's a huge impact on the economic mobility of our region. And so if we want to change that trajectory, we got to get kids to school. One bright spot that we see is PPS, compared to other school districts across the country, is improving attendance faster than their peer cities. And when we look at some of the programming that PPS is putting together, they're facing challenges, more students coming that are English language learners, and they're thriving at certain schools, right? So at Concord, which we did a story in our Rising Up section, really dove deep into that. You can learn more about how they're getting English language learners integrated into that school and how they're leveraging the English language learners as a huge support for designing education that works for all kids. And you can see from the outcomes here at Concord, Black, white, Hispanic, low-income students all are achieving at much higher levels than district averages at Concord, and has a lot to do with the design and the thinking that they're doing to support all students, especially their English language learners in the school. Look, our mission is to make sure every kid is succeeding in every school every day. And we work with community and systems partners to mobilize resources and coordinate support so that every community is a place where all kids can get to school safely and on time. Every family has what they need so kids come to school ready to learn. And every school is a place where all students and staff feel they belong and are excited to be. And so if you're with us, on that mission, we need you to show up, right? Together, we can support success in all of our schools. You can go to ourschoolspittsburgh.org to learn more about what was in the report to the community. There's analysis, data, and information about every single public school in Pittsburgh in there. You can also use the QR code that's on your screen right now to donate to support students in our neighborhood schools. And you can just get in contact with me anytime you want through Facebook, Instagram, or any of the other socials where this is showing. We appreciate you, Pittsburgh. We're really grateful to be able to do this work with you, and we're so grateful for a great year here, even with the challenges that we're facing. Thanks so much. Hope you have a great holiday season and a good new year.